Number 2, and I'm now going to be discussing Dr. Sebastian Gaig's talk on Alexithymia, Autism and Anxiety. Now this talk was not live, it was on demand. I watched it after the main conference, and I thought this talk was really interesting. Now Dr. Sebastian Gaig asked the question, what role does alexithymia play in the common mental health difficulties in autism? So alexithymia, for those of you who don't know, is defined as a difficulty in identifying and describing one's own emotions, and it's very, very common in autism. It's not unique to autism. Quite a few other mental health conditions can have alexithymia as a key trait, and also it can occur in members of the population who don't have any other mental health problems as well. So it's not unique to mental health problems or autism, but it is more common in those groups. So he talks about the difference between fear and anxiety. Now, fear is a response to an immediate threat. So, for example, I've got a dog phobia. So, fear for me would be if a dog was running towards me off a lead, I would be in a state of fear. Anxiety is different. Anxiety is a response to an anticipated threat. So, like, say, if you've got an exam coming up, you're going to experience anxiety before the event. And a disorder, so basically everyone experiences fear and anxiety. They are normal human emotions. Everyone experiences them, but they become a disorder when the feeling is disproportionate, uncontrollable, is persistent, and it interferes with day-to-day activities. That's the definition of a disorder. Around 10 to 15% of people in the general population have an anxiety disorder at some point in their life. It's most commonly a specific phobia. However, the prevalence in autism is around 40 to 50%, though estimates range from 20 to 80%. And the most common in autism is generalised anxiety, social anxiety, and phobias. Now, there's an emerging consensus regarding the key factors of anxiety in autism. These include sensory difficulties, intolerance of uncertainty, alexithymia, maladaptive emotion regulation, and repetitive behaviours. Now, intolerance of uncertainty and maladaptive emotion regulation play the biggest role in anxiety in the general population, not just autism. So even in the general population, if you have an intolerance of uncertainty, the higher your intolerance of uncertainty and the more maladaptive your emotion regulation, the higher anxiety you're going to face. So this isn't unique to autism, but in autism these factors are elevated, and this is obviously related to the key autism criteria that kind of do include issues around uncertainty and so on. So in autism these factors are elevated, and this is also related to sensory difficulties and alexithymia. And this explains why the intolerance of uncertainty and emotion regulation difficulties are such a problem. Now, intolerance of uncertainty. There's actually such a thing as the Intolerance of Uncertainty scale, which I'm not sure if you can access that online. But some of the questions include, unforeseen events upset me greatly, so you would say yes or no to that, or it frustrates me not having all the information I need. Autistics show a greater intolerance of uncertainty in questionnaires than, say, controls. Now, emotion regulation refers to all the strategies we can use to regulate how we feel, and this can operate at different stages. So there's situation selection. We can regulate the situations we expose ourselves to, for example, avoiding certain emotions being triggered. We can regulate what aspects of a situation we pay attention to regulate how we feel, and we can also think differently about a situation, which is cognitive change or flexibility. And we can try to regulate how we express our emotion. Now, there are both maladaptive and adaptive ways of regulating your emotions. Maladaptive strategies maintain negative emotions. For example, negative rumination, avoidance, suppression. These strategies maintain anxiety over the long run, whereas adaptive strategies include reappraisal, acceptance, and self-soothing. So why are autistics more anxious? Well, he talks about autism and predictive coding, and there's an idea that the sensory difficulties in autism contribute both to the intolerance of uncertainty, and this results in greater anxiety. So our brains are trying to predict the most likely sensory information that is coming in. Our brains are trying to anticipate what most likely sensory stimuli are going to be experienced. Our brain tries to create predictions, and predictions are compared to incoming sensory information, so it creates a sort of feedback loop. This is predictive coding. So we can then update our predictions, so we can then anticipate what will happen. The brain only kicks into full action when the predictions it makes are not completely fulfilled. So if in a new situation, our predictions are not very accurate, your attention and memory systems will then kick in, so you can learn more effectively about the new situation, so you can then adapt better to similar situations in the future. Our brains are very effective at filtering out information that is not unexpected. So when in environments where we have good predictions about what we will experience, we don't need to pay attention so much, so we can then focus on things that are less expected, because we've already anticipated it, so we can then filter it out. So we don't need to take everything in. In new situations, the brain has not made very effective predictions, and this makes it more vigilant in order to learn and make better predictions in the future. And that's experienced as greater anxiety. So, like a new day at a new job, your first day at a new job, a first day at school, and so on. Because you don't have effective models that allow you to filter out the information. So sensory processing is very heavily linked to the concept of uncertainty. If there is a mismatch between predictions and incoming information, if a mismatch between predictions and incoming information is what defines uncertainty, the mismatch between predictions and incoming information is what defines uncertainty, is what I want to say. So because obviously we can predict better what will happen in familiar places. But in autism, there are differences that contribute to sensory differences and experiencing greater uncertainty. So in autism, the predictive coding works atypically, or not. So in other words, if in autism, it's almost like every single moment or every single moment is experienced as if for the first time, basically, which is the argument as to why autistics experience greater anxiety, because every single moment is being experienced anew. So that's why we're vigilant all the time, because everything is new. We don't have we haven't kind of assimilated information in a way that non-autistics do. So everything is new, everything is fresh, and everything is scary. Because we're not so good at predicting what will happen next, basically. That makes sense to me. And this is very much linked to the sensory processing, because predictive coding is all based upon sensory input. And then he talks about alexithymia, and again, there's an alexithymia scale with questions such as: I'm often confused by what emotion I'm feeling, it's difficult to find the right words for feelings, I'm often puzzled by sensations in my body. And this can create anxiety as well, because if you're not sure about what's going on in terms of your feelings, then that can create anxiety, because it's an uncertain situation. So alexithymia, again, is due to differences in predictive coding, not really knowing what's going on, or not being able to predict how you feel and things like that. How we feel is closely linked to our physiological arousal responses, but people differ in how sensitive they are to their levels of arousal. And again, there are questions that tap into this, such as how aroused do you feel versus how aroused are you actually. Changes in heart rate, etc., which they can then go on and measure. So alexithymia is difficulties reading internal states of arousal, and it's very heavily connected to interoception, it's a link between alexithymia and our ability to perceive internal bodily states, which is interoception. Interoception is the awareness of internal physiological states, and alexithymia is uncertainty about the meaning of those states.